With us now, NewsNation legal contributor Jesse Weber. Jesse, wow, you know, we had some major revelations yesterday. You had the FBI director saying Robinson's DNA evidence was found on a screwdriver on the rooftop, a towel around the firearm, and then he said this.
Suspect wrote a note saying, I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. That note was written before the shooting. Evidence of its existence, we now have learned, existed before the shooting, was in the location in the suspect and partner's home.
So at the same time, Robinson's own father identified his son in videos released by the FBI. We're awaiting DNA results from the firearm itself. But what charges are you expecting as a result of what we know so far?
And also palm prints and shoe impressions. I mean, if all this comes in, it's a plethora of evidence. So when you look at the booking statement, the probable cause affidavit, they listed several charges. We don't know if these are going to be the official charges, but more likely than not, they will be. You have aggravated murder, you have obstruction, you have felony discharge of a firearm. Really, if we can focus on the aggravated murder, which I think is really important here, the reason they are trying to go with that charge is because that could potentially qualify this case for the death penalty. In order to get aggravated murder, they're basically making the argument that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk in a way that posed a grave danger to others, right? Opening fire in a crowd. Yes, the target was Charlie Kirk, but when you open fire with 3,000 people around, that presented a grave risk of death to others. And I think that is how they are trying to get the death penalty on the table. So those are the charges I would be looking out for on the state level. There is a question about whether or not we will ultimately see federal charges, but that becomes a little bit more of a complicated case. And also, as you heard on Chris Cuomo's show last night, them looking into his Discord account and his online activity. Does that qualify? Was he trying to recruit anybody? Was he trying to work with anybody? Was he, were any of his messages crossing state lines and create any kind of legal liability? So we're still in the early stages. We could see charges elevated down the road or additional charges, but I think those three are what we should be on the lookout for today.
Yeah, and a guest we had on in the previous hour, Jesse, mentioned that sometimes the death penalty is pursued as a bit of a scare tactic to try to get an admission here. But in this case, you have both the president, the governor of the state have called for the death penalty. The state, though, has only carried out 2 in the past 2 decades, with inmates reportedly spending an average of 34 years on death row. So any major roadblocks to pursuing the death penalty here, and what are your thoughts on that pursuit overall?
That's a great question. Look, death penalty cases become very, very complicated. Aside from the fact that you need special defense counsel to ultimately represent Mr. Robinson, there's the question of whether or not the case will be delayed. There's also the question, can you even impanel a jury that would be death penalty qualified? Remember, asking a jury to vote in favor of executing somebody is easier said than done, and that can elongate the process. But look what happened in the Bryan Kohberger case, right? The death penalty was on the table. That became a bargaining chip, and he ultimately pled guilty, and there was no trial. Is that something that we may see here, given what you laid out and what Nancy laid out is a lot and a lot and a lot of evidence if it actually comes in? I mean, that's something to be considered, but this was a heinous attack in very unique circumstances, and I can completely understand why prosecutors are trying to move forward with the most serious penalty possible.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.